Before this video starts, I just want to let you know that this is for a school project. I know that there's thousands of videos out there talking about the same. So in the start of the digital age, there was a couple of things that you could do, but now you could do much more with all these technological advancements. And then there's thousands of hours of content that's out there for free. But have you ever wondered how they get paid? Data is the new currency. Have you ever wondered how Google became worth so much even though you've never bought a physical Google product? Unless you bought a Nexus phone, a Pixel, or a Google Home. The way that Google makes a large part of their money is through ads. They use Google AdSense, that's what they use specifically. But they don't just do ads, they use targeted ads. Targeted ads are the most efficient ads that there is. The way that these ads are so efficient is because they feed off user data and then they use that to specifically feed ads to their users. And this is how these free services have so much money even though they don't sell any physical products. One of my favorite ways to stay safe on the internet is by using browsers. One of the most secure browsers that I like to use is Firefox. It's not Chrome, which is owned by Google. And all the other secure browsers, they're not as good as Firefox in my experience. And Firefox has like stock options that let you take your privacy far compared to Chrome. Stock to Firefox, you can remove all tracking cookies and you don't need any external plugins like Chrome. It's just plug and play. Also, Chrome, it tends to use up a lot more RAM than Firefox. Firefox just tends to be a lot faster. Firefox also has a great password manager and password generator. Chrome also has one, but I like to use Firefox. If you install Firefox, these are some plugins I just recommend. Adblock, it blocks all ads, so all these targeted ads, and then there's also times that there's ads that are possibly viruses, so you click on them and you accidentally download something and install it to your computer. I would also recommend Facebook Container. It's a great plugin. It was made by Mozilla, which is the people that made Firefox, and it's made to stop Facebook cookies, which they track your browsing even though you're not on Facebook. So they know what websites you're in, and they use that data to feed you ads. Ghostery is another great plugin. It removes tracers and trackers, HTTPS everywhere. It's great because HTTPS grants you military grade encryption, which is AES encryption, and also HTTP is less secure compared to HTTPS. Also faster page load, which loads your websites faster. Another great one is TOSDR, which is TOS didn't read, which there's times that you go to a website and the TOS that you don't read but you agree to has really scummy practices, and then it tells you what you agreed to. A great way to be more safe on the internet is to use a different password for every website. I like to use haveibeenpwned.com to check like if my emails or passwords have been leaked, but do not fully rely on this because this is only the public leaks. Usually if a hacker finds out your password for one website, they use that same login for every website that they want to find your login for. This is really useful for hackers because people tend to have the same password for everything, the same password and the same email for everything. On top of having your passwords leaked, you can enable two-factor authentication. People say that you should not use SMS two-factor authentication or your phone number because hackers can spoof your phone number and all that, but you don't really need to be worried about that. The only people that should really be worried about that are people that are famous and that should be worried about being hacked. Like for example, there's this YouTuber that goes by the name of H3H Street. He had a hacker call his cell phone provider and his cell phone provider gave him the SIM card that had his phone number. So basically he could have access to all his SMS text messages and he had access to two-factor authentication through SMS. But you shouldn't really be worried about that if you're just a regular user on the internet. Also, there's one thing that you could do that's safer than SMS, and that's using an authenticator app. I used to use Google Authenticator, but the problem with Google Authenticator is that if you lose your phone, you lose all your logins. Meanwhile, if you use SMS, you lose your phone, you just get another SIM card with the same phone number, and you're all good. The reason I don't use Google Authenticator is because I upgraded my phone and I did a trade-in, and that old phone, I forgot to transfer the codes, so I lost the logins to 4 of my accounts. Also, Facebook. Now that we're done talking about passwords, there may be a way for you to stop companies from feeding you targeted ads. Every tech company provides a free service, or at least most of them, unless it's a newspaper or something like that. And your internet data is basically their currency. Internet data is the new gold. It is a market that's worth over 107.5 billion in 2009, which is a 22% increase from 2017, according to TechCrunch.com. Facebook is a super successful business, but how do they get all the money if you've never bought a physical Facebook product ever? Like, Facebook doesn't really make physical product besides the Oculus VR headsets, and that's about it. And also really cheap Facebook phones are only in the third world countries. Also, Facebook usually makes all of its money from Facebook and Instagram feeding you targeted ads. Social medias like Twitter allow you to remove personalized ads. That's great because social medias know every single person you follow and every post you like and how long you interact or look at a certain post. They know, like, if you see a picture of something, they know if you zoomed in to get a better look at, like, for example, a monitor in the background. Facebook is probably going to feed you ads for that monitor. Facebook's ad manager is one of the most advanced ad algorithms. It tracks you even though you're not using Facebook. Facebook is so generous about their ad algorithm that they even let you use the Facebook ad algorithm on your own websites. It's called the Facebook Ad Manager. You could put that on the website. You will get more money per every ad, but again, you'll be feeding to the Facebook database. Now, my favorite way to be secure on the internet, using Linux. Linux is a great option for super advanced users. Windows is not the most secure OS that there is out there, and it's not even open source. If an operating software is open source, you could easily find vulnerabilities, but again, you could easily patch them. So it'll be all around more polished, and then people can just go in and just modify it to their content. One thing that I don't like about Windows is that it's not really that stable. Countless times I've been using my computer, I shut it down, and I just turn it back on to get a blue screen of death. I don't really like the reliability of it. Meanwhile, like, Linux is more stable. You could upgrade whenever you want, and there's so many possibilities to Linux. It's literally your own. Since Microsoft employees are the only ones that could see the code and change the code, it's not really that stable compared to Linux. A great thing about Linux is that it's really easy to install into your computer. All you need is a USB drive. And with that USB drive, you could plug it into any computer and use that as a temporary Linux desktop. Also, if you want to install Linux onto a hard drive, you just connect the USB drive, make it bootable using a program like Rufus. And the great part is that Linux is really small, and since USB drives are not really known for their speed, you could just use that as a temporary computer and just go to any computer, plug in the USB drive, use Linux, unplug it, and it's almost like you never use that computer. And also, you could use it to install links onto the hard drive or SSD. Linux is free and it's open source. The great thing about this is that the people that see the code are white hat hackers and black hat hackers. Black hat hackers, they're the people that find vulnerabilities to use it against people. But white hat hackers, they're more common. People like that, they're the good guys. They find vulnerabilities and they patch it. And then for the next update, their code is going to be part of Linux. Linux it's an ongoing OS. It doesn't stop growing. The main thing that Windows really has going for it is that it's really reliable in terms of having everything work with each other. Every program that you use is made on Windows for Windows, and usually Linux compatibility, that's something that developers don't really care about. That's what they think about second after Windows, because Windows is such a big market. You can't really use Linux that much with Windows programs without any modifications. You need modifications such as Wine, which lets you use .exe programs. That .exe programs are made for Windows. .exe files cannot be used on Linux. One bad thing about Linux is that it's not that user-friendly. There are many times that you would be doing something and there's no graph user interface, and you would just be typing in code onto a command prompt. But the great thing about that is that there's forums of just thousands of people that have easy step-by-step guides on how to do these tasks. A good thing about Linux is that it's really easy to run. If you have an old computer that's really slow, and it's on Windows, you could just install Linux on it and it runs way better. A computer with 4 gigabytes of RAM running on Windows is really slow and you could barely use it. And if you open more than like a couple of Chrome tabs, it just crashes. Meanwhile, on Linux, you could easily live your life with 4 gigs of RAM. The minimum that I would say for Windows would be 8 gigabytes of RAM. That's the ideal minimum if you want to have a nice stable OS. Meanwhile, on Linux, it's 4 gigabytes because how small the OS is. The way that I make Linux usable is that I run virtual machines. Virtual machines let me use Windows inside of Linux. You could use... The reason that you would use Linux to run virtual machines of Windows is because you could do something called PCIe pass-through. PCIe pass-through lets you use your GPU graphics card and make it work on Windows almost as if it was natively and almost like it wasn't a virtual machine. Virtual machines are not slower than Windows. In fact, they're like probably faster because you have less bloat installed on them. I like to use Windows virtual machines to do gaming or to run editing software, which is really intensive on the GPU and the CPU. And also editing software and games, they run better on Windows because they're made for Windows and there's not really an alternative to Linux. When I have Linux, I mainly just use Linux to browse the web, do my homework, and do everything except for gaming and editing. Now here's something great about Linux. There's thousands of flavors of it. They're called distros, short for distributions. If you want to be a super advanced user and monitor every internet packet and have an OS built for anything that's like super user, I recommend Kali Linux. You know that you need it if you know about it. You must be in the know to like really know about it. But realistically, the two big ones that I would recommend is Arch Linux and Ubuntu. Those are the two biggest ones. And also there's those distros and then there's people that make tweaks on those distros. The two big ones I would say is Manjaro Linux, which is based off Arch Linux. So it's basically Arch Linux, but it's a modified version of it, which makes it better. I would recommend Manjaro Linux for more advanced users and that are willing to search up in the forums anytime they have a problem or they want to do something. But if you just want a simple operating system, I would recommend Pop! OS. Pop! OS is based off Ubuntu Linux. It is really simple and has many graphic interfaces. And I mentioned this because there's many times that you want to do something on Linux and the only way to do it is by using a command prompt. Also, Pop! OS, it's a great looking OS and it's really simple to navigate, and you have virtual windows, which is just like different. It's like having 2 monitors or 4 monitors, but you only have 1 monitor. And also with Pop! OS, it's really simple to have all your drivers installed and up to date at all times. So my conclusion to Linux, the main reason you would use this is because Windows privacy settings, they're not as transparent as they should be. There's only 3 Windows privacy options. You know that there's way more than that Microsoft is collecting. Microsoft is collecting way more data than you think they are. Meanwhile, in Linux, you can monitor every single packet that goes in and out of your internet. So you know what's safe, you could block it. It's not. The thing about Linux is that there's a learning curve if you want to do advanced things. Like for example, one of the hardest things I did on Linux was to set up our PCIe pass-through. There are plenty of videos of showing how to do it, and there's even a master guide which is all text showing with screenshots showing how to do it. It originally took me 3 hours to set up. If I were to set it up again, it'd take me 20 minutes because as a first-time user, there's a learning curve. And I was still a beginner to Linux, and I didn't really know my workarounds and around the operating system. And again, if you want to use Linux, I would only recommend PCIe pass-through. If you want to watch 4K videos on the virtual machine, do gaming or edit videos, or anything that would be really intensive that requires Windows, besides just web browsing. One thing that I like about virtual machines is that you could be using a virtual machine and you could get a virus on that virtual machine, but since it's a virtual machine, it will not affect your main OS. It's a box inside of the box. This box has a virus, but if you remove that box, then there is no virus. Virtual machines is that you could duplicate them, so you could just duplicate a backup just in case one fails, one gets a blue screen to death, just standard issues with Windows. And you could have dedicated virtual machines just to download things or do things that are potentially unsafe. I like to have a virtual machine just for playing games that has nothing else installed. Like that, it runs as fast as it can, and another one for editing videos, and that virtual machine has access to my hard drive. So if that virtual machine has a virus or that like locks all my data, it'll also lock everything on that hard drive. But I don't want that. Search the internet. One big thing you'll see is people talking about VPNs. VPNs are not what you think they are. Every time you see an advertisement for a VPN, they always scare you into buying one. They say that they could see your passwords. Hackers can grab your passwords, but in reality, they can't. Having hackers steal your passwords was only a possibility back then when we used plain text. And now we use encryption for everything. Every single app, HTTPS, they have encryption. So there's no way that people can steal your passwords meanwhile you're logging in. Also, VPNs don't really give you the privacy that they claim they will. The only things that VPNs really promise is that you could spoof your location so you could watch Netflix in Australia, which has different content, or you could be in a country like China where the internet is super monitored and there's so many websites that are blocked. For example, YouTube, Google, all those websites are blocked in China. But if you're in China with a VPN, you could use American internet, which is great. Also, VPNs block what your ISP can see. You should only be worried about what your ISP can see if you pirate movies, which is illegal, and your ISP finds out about it. But only certain ISPs care about that. And also, you could use a VPN if you know that your internet is being monitored and you don't want to Google something or go on a website or research a topic in an internet connection that is being monitored. Like for example, if you're in a church and you're Googling something about your sexuality, something like that, something that the church wouldn't accept of, they know your phone and the phone's MAC address, and they know what done in each phone, or at least what website. With AES, they only know what website you were in, but not specifically where in the website you were in. So you could block off what your ISP knows. So it's almost like you were just using, all they see is just encrypted data and they don't know what websites you entered. Okay, so I just realized that I forgot to record an outro. Well, thank you for listening to this. I would like to end this off by saying that today's technology, it has like standard encryption. You're safe in the internet. You shouldn't be scared, because when I was watching it back, I felt as if I was using scare tactics that VPNs use. You could if you really want to, you could live your whole life using the internet the way that everyone else just uses it. The only difference is that you'll get less targeted ads and your overall experience will be better. And yeah, thank you for listening.